Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Newsgram. Today we're going to talk about love and war involving ordinary human beings just trying to live peaceful lives. People doing their jobs, going to school, hanging out with their friends, all while a war rages out in their backyard. When I first sat down to write this edition of Newsgram, Russia had just invaded the Ukraine. And it got me thinking just how often this scenario exists throughout history. What war or conflict was raging when you grew up? There's always one going on somewhere. It's tremendously sad. But enough on that. I ran across a book that I want to share with you that takes place during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement, or Belfast Agreement, was signed on April 10th of 1998, and it ended the Troubles, also called the Northern Ireland Conflict, and it put an end to 30 years of street fighting, bombing, sniper attacks, and all kinds of other violence that had been going on there since the late 1960s. Violence that killed over 3,000 people. 10 times that many were injured before a final, peaceful resolution was reached in 1998. Doesn't even seem that long ago. So why am I telling you all this? It's a piece of history that you need to know as we set sail for Northern Ireland. The year is 1969, and Northern Ireland troubles are just beginning. But this is not a war story. It's a love story, or a failed love story, or, well, we're going to leave that up to you to decide, actually. What I can tell you is there's a car full of teenage boys, 4 to be specific, and they're headed out to a place called the Flamingo. These 4 boys aren't out to do anybody any harm, they just want to meet some girls. And what did they do on the way? They gave each other nicknames.
At the beginning, where the boys are together and they're all called Billy, the 4 boys are called Billy. So they give each other nicknames so that they know who's talking to who.
Of course. Can you imagine the conversation between Billies? You'd probably get sick of hearing the word. Anyway, that is Billy Menamin, the 5th Billy in our story today. He's the author of the book Mary Whyte Was Right Pedro.
It's an interesting book, I think. But that's not for me to say, that's for the readers.
It is an interesting book, and I thought giving each other nicknames was a fun way to get to know some of the main characters, just living their lives the way teenagers do during what was a very difficult time in Northern Ireland. Rodan, Pedro, Pablo, and Cochise all made their way to the Flamingo around 11:30 p.m., where they met Mary Whyte and some of her friends, and we begin to realize the power of this random encounter.
Love. And I'm not talking about sexual love now, I'm talking just about love of friends, that sort of thing. But love has a way of triumphing over every other emotion or decision. It does in the end in the book, and I'm really happy about that. We all need to love each other.
Mary Whyte Was Right Pedro is a work of fiction where we get to watch the boys mature, face challenges, and experience different events that unfold over the years. Their lives take some unusual turns and lead to an unfortunate estrangement, an eventual reunion, and a monumental dying wish. And I know that sounds a bit vague, but it's supposed to make you want to read the book. Never mind. I'll just tell you about it.
No. We want people to buy the book. Mary Whyte was right, Pedro.
He says the book was originally going to be about a forbidden love, or a love that couldn't be because of the political and religious differences that were going on at the time. But in the process of writing it, it kind of took on a life of its own.
One of the things that I do want people to understand from the book is just how much the normal people in Northern Ireland were, if you like, heroes of that time. Because, yes, there were an awful lot of violence going on, there was an awful lot of horrible things happening, but in general, people just kept their heads down, kept out of trouble, and got on with living the best life they could. And over 30 years of the Troubles, the people who were in combat, shall we say, the combatants, were, over 30 years, they came to realise that everything was going on as normal and they were at a stalemate. And that was one of the motivating factors for coming together and thrashing out the Good Friday Agreement. And I want people to understand just how the normal people in society had a role to play in not getting involved, in keeping society going the way it should. And I want that to be acknowledged. The other thing that I want to be acknowledged again is fundamental conservatism, usually as a blight on relationships, because the conservative part of it seeks for tradition and stability and structure, and the fundamental part of it seeks for being right and wrong. And if if I'm right, then you have to be wrong if you disagree with me. I would like that to come through in the book as well, and I think it does.
So this book is probably for you if you're interested in a book about ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances where love triumphs.
I would say my book would appeal to anyone who's interested in the Northern Ireland situation over that time, and anyone who is sort of wanting an alternative to the normal Northern Ireland literature that comes out where it's about bombs and guns and bullets and all that sort of stuff. This is not about that. This acknowledges it in one or two places, but it's about normal everyday life in a violent situation, but it swims against the tide that way. We weren't all at each other's throats in those days. And again, the thing about the ordinary people keeping society going and not allowing themselves to get drawn into the violence, and thereby, I think, saving Northern Ireland.
Mary Whyte was Right Pedro by Billy Menamin. I think you'll enjoy this one, and it's ready for you to download right now at Amazon.com. We also put a link to it in the show notes if you want to click there. And that will do it for this edition of Newsgram from WebTalkRadio.com.